Hello and welcome to the Community Q&A. I'm Kristen, a software engineer at Hypermode, and today answering your questions is Gajanan, the CTO of Dgraph, now CTO of Hypermode, and Kevin, aka KVG, CEO of Hypermode. This week, we announced in a blog post that Dgraph Labs is officially becoming part of Hypermode. That post answered some basic questions about the transition. There's a link to the post about that in the description. Today, we're going to focus on questions that weren't necessarily answered there. We'll watch for questions in the chat, but we've had a few questions pre-submitted, so we'll start with those. To kick us off, Kevin and Gajanan, what is Hypermode?
The big question. First and foremost, Hypermode's mission, why we exist, what we want to do is we want to make it really easy for developers to augment their applications with AI. More specifically, we're building a toolkit and infrastructure for building those AI applications. And to kind of go, like a layer beneath that, like the major innovations that we're bringing to market are, one, a fully managed vector graph data store that's built on top of some really incredible technology. An inference engine, which the way to think about it is we see these inference engines as a way to, in a really shorthand way, to be able to express your AI logic in TypeScript or, because it's going to be a WASM-based runtime, in Go or Python, whatever language you're most comfortable with, to describe, hey, when you generate an embedding, do it off of this feature of a product, go and store it in the vector store, find similar products, execute this logic, tune, prompt, rack, whatever that piece is, a really shorthand way for you to describe that thing, and then respond back to the client with it. And then last, maybe most importantly, is a bunch of production tooling for actually making those services run in production. This is going to be things like guardrails, where how do we actually make sure that the responses that my application provides are reasonable within collective bounds, where especially if you have systems that are talking to customers or interacting with customers, how do we make sure that they're safe to put in front of them? How do we solve fault tolerance, graceful failovers? How do we actually debug those sorts of things? That's Hypermode in a quick nutshell.
That's awesome. And so what do you think this means for the future of Dgraph?
Gajanan, please.
Yeah, future. And it's a very interesting opportunity for Dgraph, because Dgraph, being a graph database, has always been placed or shown as one of the infrastructure pieces for AI and machine learning applications. Everybody knows that graphs are used everywhere, but now AI opens up a large field where we can combine the power of graphs and vectors and make it more usable. And what we envision is that all future applications are going to be to have some component of AI. So as a result, this is opening up much bigger opportunity for Dgraph to address the application development market.
Yeah, and Gajan, actually, I think you said it really, really well in your blog post as 45 days ago or so, where you talked a lot about how many like the fundamental data structures of AI applications, deep neural networks, these sorts of things, like these are all fundamentally graph structures or trees. And there's something really special about combining both your persistence layer to represent your data in a graph, as well as then I think the layer of AI magic, fairy dust, whatever you want to call it, for vector search. HSW is again vector traversal. There's something really special about unifying these things. Yeah. And I think especially for Dgraph, where if we see this extrinsic trend of AI continuing to drive forward, this is actually a wonderful thing for Dgraph, where it is going to be better and better footed to serve modern applications over time. And so hopefully this is exciting for the Dgraph community, that there is now a huge amount of investment going into making this product phenomenal.
Yeah.
So it sounds like there's a lot of excited users.
Oh yeah. So I maybe a quick backstory on me. So actually my first job in tech was actually back at Neo4j in the early 2010s. And one of the things that I fell so deeply in love with is kind of there's this concept graph as the parent data structure of a lot of really interesting things. And what I'm really excited for about like where Hypermode is going for, again, as a product and as a company, what this means for the Dgraph community and Dgraph users is a lot of the use cases that brought you to Graph, right? Again, these traversal oriented use cases of recommendation systems, of fraud detection, of network analysis, like master data management, entity resolution. Those are all things that end up getting supercharged by kind of this, again, this most recent cohort of AI innovations, whatever the right phrase is for it, where because you're able to augment, have LLMs then provides, essentially machine interpretability to this unstructured data that you can then contextualize in the graph. And then when you're doing your collaborative filtering, when you're doing your, network analysis, hey, which of these behaviors is fraudulent, or what's the impact of this thing downstream? You now are actually giving more and more context to that graph to make more and more powerful responses and queries and traversals. And so net, I think each product gets better. What do you think, Gaj?
Yeah, that's right. Basically, see, one thing again, just though it is a repetition, but majority of the future AI applications, future applications are going to use some sort of AI augmentation, and the more AI augmentation, the power comes from the data and the connectivity of the data. And that is where Dgraph is very good at. Dgraph is already a distributed scalable graph database, and then this vector, and moreover the emphasis on the developers. That is the critical part of this whole thing, of this whole Hypermode journey, that this power is going to be made available to the developers. And that is what excites me truly.
I mean, I think that's one of the best things that I think happen in like this latest generation of developer tools, developer products, where the idea of putting out like a very industrial developer experience is just, I mean, no one would ever do that. And so I think now, especially as we look at the future iterations of the way, Dgraph users can access a hosted version of Dgraph, like developer experience is going to be the North Star for all of these things. Of how do we end up making sure that we've removed all of the unnecessary complexity from the developer? Guillermo back from Brazil has this great phrase where he talks about really, really strong defaults with infinite customization. And I think we can start to bring that sort of perspective to the back end, bring that sort of perspective to the AI market. So yeah, I think you're totally right. We're going to make this a lot more accessible for a lot more people.
So speaking of our developer community, for developers who are midway through using AI with Dgraph, what's the best course of action for them to take? Do we continue with our current development strategies, or is it wiser to pause and see how Hypermode streamlines AI integration?
Yeah, I can give you the product roadmap discussion. I think, Gajan, I'd love your perspective on the, again, like as from a technical standpoint, architectural standpoint, from a, like, if I were making decisions as a leader at a company, first and foremost, very self-serving, you should totally shoot me an email or fill out the web form or find me on Twitter. Tell me what you're building, and I would love to bring you on as a design partner, a beta customer, and we'll make sure that we are making sure the contours of Dgraph really suit your use case. So that's answer one. If you're partway through kind of your AI journey, that is a perfect time for us to talk. Beyond that, it starts to look at, okay, what are the things that Hypermode wants to be and what it doesn't want to be? For example, again, life is long, but as of right now, we have no plans or ambitions to build our own foundational models. We think there are some incredible, very, 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 very smart people building those models. And what we think we can do better is actually instead provide the infrastructure on top of those models to say, hey, as you're trying to identify what is the right embedding model for my fashion product, we can help you actually A/B test or multivariate test all the way through. Hey, we're going to try a different type of prompt plus the embedding model. Here are the different permutations. These ones map to your data better than the others. And so the way I would think about Hypermode is we really want to be your middleware layer for all your AI infrastructure that hits your web applications. Meaning, there's a lot of innovation. There's a lot of change that's coming in this market. And what we think the best way for developers to be really successful with these again, shifts in landscape and architecture is by partnering with a company like Hypermode, where we can abstract away all that complexity and say, hey, we think you should have something in each one of these boxes. Here's a default. But if you've invested really heavily in Pinecone or Weaviate, or maybe you've got another transactional data store that you really, really like, we're going to make all those things really pluggable. We're going to have open, well-structured APIs between all these pieces for you to then be able to sew those things together. We think there's a network effect of using all the pieces that we offer as default. But again, infinite customization, your business is unique. And so we'll again be that enduring partner to kind of stitch that stuff up for you. Gotcha. I'll go to the research phase. Like, how should folks be thinking about this stuff?
One thing is that we already have quite a few users and customers who have given us a feedback that they are trying to combine Dgraph and the modern AI tooling, and everybody is facing problems due to the complexity of plumbing all these things together. And that's where this matters. Basically, what Hypermode is going to do is that it is just going to make users free of that pain. We have all these pieces tied together, and they are more accessible to the developer. And that way, it to me, it is engineering wise, it looks like a very interesting alternative, because then the users and the customers can focus on their business problems rather than focusing on these infrastructure problems. That is one part. And secondly, what is happening in today in the research world, or in the industry also, is these models are constantly evolving, tools are constantly evolving, and those in order to incorporate that, it is very hard for any individual application developer or a small application development team to cope up with those changes that fast. And that's where Hypermode will make it easy, because we'll be constantly upgrading to the newer technologies and making those tools available in our toolkit.
Yeah. And I think the last thing I would kind of like to kind of round off that question, like, hey, I'm starting my AI journey. How do I partner with Hypermode or with Dgraph? The other commitment I can make, it seems like we're going to work in public. I think one of the things that made Next.js such a successful project, what's made a lot of, I think, these other open source communities so healthy, is spending a lot of time working through RFCs, really kind of calling your shot 3, 6, 12, 24 months down the line, saying, hey, this is what we're going to build. And here are very specific things we're not going to build. Here are the things that we're thinking about, and then engaging with the community, reacting to the community. I think, again, the thing that I'm really going to try to do with this community is really try to kind of walk the walk and say, hey, we claim we're about open source. We claim we're about actually like engaging and nurturing this community. And kind of the take is, hold me accountable for, watch this channel, watch our website, watch our Twitter, all these things. Hold me accountable to actually delivering on that stuff.
So Kevin, given that we're working in public, what can we?
No. I don't like leading.
Well, you're giving me something to work with. But what can we expect in the first Hypermode release of Dgraph?
Oh man, the authentic technical answer is like, we're definitely still getting to crisp resolution on exactly what we're releasing and when. The corporate is like, we've named this already. Vector support is coming. In what iteration, what permutation is that thing? We're definitely trying to figure out the right delineations. Where, again, this is where part of the working in public is going to happen. Where I think, in general, like the framework for the way I think open source things will flow into Dgraph, and again, the other open source projects we have and the new open source projects that we release, is it'll very much be kind of that waterfall pattern that you see a lot of organizations execute, where maybe the hand-rolled, really difficult to use thing only goes to large customers who have engagements with the commercial entity. But then over time, you find ways to abstract that piece and make it easier to use, and then it heads to self-serve. And then from there, it gets released open source to the community to continue that like broad adoption cycle. And so, yeah, I can't give hard commitments on exactly what's coming in the roadmap. I know actually, to be honest, there's actually really good comments on the Discuss forum of folks like, hey, can you commit to the the roadmap of this currently exists? And like, again, to be really honest with this group, probably not. Like, I don't know if we can commit to everything that with the previous direction of the company. I don't know if all those things are going to dovetail in. There are invariants that any data product needs to have, of like, we will provide and ensure data retention. Like, you can't lose your data. We'll make sure the thing is durable and stays up. We'll make sure the thing is secure. And beyond that, again, this is where I'm going to try really hard to, again, engage and partner with the community. Is I'll say, okay, and here's where we're going over the long run. What are the things you need that are along that path that we can prioritize? Or how can we make sure that we enable you all to contribute on your own? And I think that's the relationship I'm hoping for us to start to grow.
Yeah, and I like that, we're going to have the foundational pieces there. I think everything else is going to be in the works and in discussion with a lot of partners that will onboard sooner rather than later. Could you clarify how the developer experiences pieces will change? Is Hypermode going to serve as a completely new product, or will these features you're building be on top of Dgraph Cloud?
Gudgeon, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, Hypermode is to be very honest, Hypermode is a set of totally new products, and Dgraph is going to be a core of that. Dgraph will be used to store data, metadata, the embeddings, and all that AI related stuff, as well as anything application needs to be stored. But then there is an inference service, and then there are front end tools which will make all this accessible. And interface engine will be the one which is really connecting the world of data with the world of artificial intelligence with the world of front-end application development.
Yeah.
So we will have all these pieces together and exposed through nice tools to the developers.
Yeah. And I see Ben and Flo have I think somewhat adjacent questions on this thread of like, kind of how does this all snap together? To be really specific, Ben, on the like, how do the different layers of the system, so closest to the actual client layer, right? Like, what is the thing that's interacting with my Next.js app, my Svelte app, my Hugo app, whatever it may be? We're very, very likely going to release an SDK that you can then, Hypermode.js, whatever, like we'll come up with a great name. That'll give you a bunch of shorthand methods for talking to, again, this inference service that Gajan's talking about. Think of these inference services as super powered lambdas or super powered functions, where you're able to end up, again, shorthanding your way through all of this like complex logic. And over longer periods of time, you can chain them together and do all this sorts of stuff. And then kind of when you talk about the data plane, I think this is where all the interesting plumbing occurs, where, again, as the like data caching layer, where you get all the data that you're actually going to derive inferences of, that's going to be Dgraph, right? Or that's going to be primarily driven by Dgraph. That thing is going to have both, again, graph structures and graph storage, as well as vector storage and vector search. Adjacent to that on the data plane are going to be things like we're going to call it model management, where there are going to be options for us to, again, bring your own model. We'll host it for you. We'll make sure we manage that infrastructure. But more likely, and I think we're going to see a lot of folks do this, we're just going to be providing like essentially an aliasing service that says, hey, hit model XYZ that is actually, again, an OpenAI API, a Hugging Face API, whatever it may be. And we'll make sure we're actually managing, like, again, like the security and secrets of that piece. Jason, that will have an embedding service that's making sure, hey, when XYZ changes about my underlying structured data, rerun the embeddings. Hey, for every nth, update of user behaviors, rerun those embeddings on people, and to make sure that, again, we are able to take all of the complexity of thinking about these chunks away from you all. And then, again, we're going to continue to expand that to have, hey, and how do we have an inference debugger, and how do we make sure all these things are working correctly? Those are all going to live in kind of that data plane, or the back end half of it.
So is it possible to implement Hypermode into an existing Dgraph project?
Mm-hmm. So The short answer is yes. This is again part of why like I'm very much in the like early beta customer advocacy. If you've got an existing Dgraph project and you're sitting there going, man, it'd be really cool if we could start to use some Gen AI with it. Please shoot me a note. I'd love to hand roll it with you. I'd love to make sure it works for you. Because then I'm going to learn from you and then iterate from there and say, okay, now here are the general purpose methods that made, Jeremy really, really successful. And then we'll go from there and go from there and go from there. For those who are saying, hey, maybe I'm not quite ready to hang out with KVG. The alternative there is if you are current, again, Dgraph Cloud user, if you're a current Dgraph enterprise customer, like there's going to be a home for you on Hypermode. Like we're going to make sure there are paved pathways to make sure that your use case continues to work and continues to thrive. Again, I'll ask for patience, y'all. We have no plans to spin down Dgraph Cloud anytime soon. Y'all are fine. If any of you all have ever worked have been customers with companies I've worked at before, I'm a really big believer in like very noisy, very long pathways to any sort of changes to your production infrastructure. And so you feel confident and continue to use that service. And then over time, I'm going to continue to try and make Hypermode really, really, really great to make you want to come and jump over and use all the cool new stuff.
Yep. And for those who are wondering, hello@hypermode.com is where you can reach us if you are interested in integrating Hypermode in some way to Dgraph. Let's see. We have a knowledge graph in Dgraph containing how people have looked after their specialist cars, restorations, purchases, etc. We were using Dgraph specifically to build our. Oh, this is a question that someone's asking, but we were using Dgraph specifically to build our own ML on top. Will Hypermode do knowledge graph and LLM integration, and how will that work?
Man of the hour, gotcha.
Yeah, actually, there has been a trend, and we have seen many of our past customers and users using Dgraph for knowledge graphs. And since this trend is becoming more and more dominant in the industry, what we definitely have a very strong opinion about that. We want to make it very easy to integrate the LLMs as well as whatever new comes in that area with the knowledge graphs. And in fact, whatever is needed, whatever development or investment needed from us, we are basically already we are on in the planning and interaction with customers like you. And if you are really keen about that, we would like to have engage with you directly on that part, because we these are the things which we really want to solve. We believe that this is going to be the future.
Yeah. And maybe to be really like concrete or specific on like that, like doing the machine learning component on top of Dgraph, where so I think in terms of like knowledge graphs, especially like semantic context, obviously like everyone on this call knows like that is one of the things that makes graphs really special. And then especially when you're looking at RAG as an implementation method for engaging with an LLM, being able to provide, instead of just like arbitrary chunks of a document, when you can actually provide some actual like parent-child relationships of, hey, this is the semantic context of this thing that you then feed into your RAG, like that is a use case we are going to make silly easy. For the actual machine learning component, I think this is where like a lot of traditional machine learning infrastructure is oriented around working on tables. And again, one of the ways in which we see a lot of folks be successful with this is you create the tables you're going to do your spins on with, whatever your machine learning tool of choice is, where you use that to generate the tables, you spit out that table, and then you do that machine learning elsewhere in a large distributed cluster. Like that's going to be a really healthy pattern where, again, we are not going to be the everything store. I would love to be over long periods of time, but there are classes of AI and machine learning that we're going to say, hey, these are better operated outside the system. We'll gild those pathways and those connectors. And so depending on exactly what you're doing with that machine learning component, again, we can share like very specific answers to that question over a long period after this call.
I have one follow-up question to, is it possible to implement Hypermode in a Dgraph project? So what you're saying is that the current data integrity will be secured for these Dgraph users and they won't be conflicting with any of their current use cases?
if I'm understanding the correct question correctly, yes. Or like data integrity will be secured.
Yes.
We'll improve current use cases. We're not going to show up tomorrow and be like, oh, hey, we've just deleted DQL. It doesn't exist anymore. Like, that's not happening. Like absolutely. Like, we're going to make sure that. I think I said this in the Discuss forum yesterday, but like something I take really, really, really seriously is like part of the commitment of building mission critical software is you give up iteration speed in exchange for saying, hey, we know we're a critical part of your business. And so any changes we make will happen really, really slowly with blow off valves and really, really, really long pathways. And so again, like nothing is changing. And yes, yeah. Jeremy, like totally with you. Like DQL is we need to find a right way to express complex traversals that you can't express in GraphQL, and I think DQL is a good fix for that.
Great. Well, I think that's all the questions that we have for right now. Again, if anyone wants to set up Hypermode within their Dgraph, their current Dgraph setup, please reach out to hello@hypermode.com. Shoot KVG a DM in either Twitter. You can find him on Twitter at KVG or Gajanon as well. But please reach out to us.
Oh, there's one more question in the chat.
One last question.
The whole community's watching. We'll give him 30 more seconds. If not, yeah. Sorry, Kristen, for interrupting your outro. Oh, where's the capital? Man, we should have just rolled that. No, we're not ready to share all of the fundraising details yet. Candidly, part of that is like wanting to save that for big splashy new stuff. But we've raised tons of cash. Company is well capitalized. We will be around for a very, very long time with investment from some really, really great tier 1 VCs. It's all I can say for now. I'm sorry. Like one-on-one, we can chat about it, but like, we want to kind of hold that news back for a little bit.
Make sure you guys stay tuned.
Cool.
All right. Well, thanks so much, guys. Again, hello@Hypermode. Feel free to reach out to us with any questions. We're happy to help. But thanks all.
Awesome. Thank you all. Take care.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.